Hey BookTube, this is Friday Reads. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks on Friday. Yay! Friday Reads on Friday. Who would have thought? I read 4 books last week, I think. So I'm going to start off with Then and Always. This is by Dani Atkins and it is narrated on audio by Susan Duerden. This, I think, was initially released in the UK as Fractured, and then it was released in the US as Then and Always. So Susan Duerden is probably on the just under average in terms of the narration for me. I didn't love it because one of the things that I found about British narrators is that they tend to sound like BBC newscasters. It's the way that they phrase a sentence, and it is also when they ask a question or a question is phrased, they go down on the end and they phrase it as a statement rather than a question. And so overall, just that style, that's a style rather than, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a personal preference for me. I don't like that. I prefer voice actors, and this was straight narration, and that she was reading it with a lot of expression, but definitely reading it. So, you know, average to mid-range, a little below mid-range marks for the narration. This is a great story about a woman who is in an accident right before she goes to college, and her best friend is killed. And so she doesn't end up going to college. She does come back to the town where this happened 5 years later to be in a wedding of one of her other best friends. And she gets a migraine and collapses right after the rehearsal dinner. And when she wakes up, she's in the hospital, but what she remembers is very different than what's actually true in the universe she wakes up in. So it's an alternative timeline where she did go to college and her friend didn't die. And so it's really weird. And at first they think she's crazy and call in the psychiatrist and put her on the psych floor and all that kind of thing. That doesn't happen, but she's very worried that it will happen because what she's talking about being true isn't true. So it's the story of how she copes with that and what happens. And I have to say that the ending is wonderful. It ended the best possible way that it could. Wonderful ending. I got to the end of it and I thought, oh, that's perfect. So I ended up giving the book 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I picked up the Loose Ends List by Carrie Firestone. I had to read this on my iPad because it's not available on audio. And I like this a lot, but I have to say that you really have to be a person that loves escaping into the lives of very wealthy people. I mean, this family is full of very quirky people who don't seem like they've got this much money, but oh my gosh, they've got so much money. It centers in on the main character, and it's told from first person, and she is about to go to college, and her grandmother calls the family together and says, I'm gonna die, so we're all gonna go on this cruise around the world. She's quite a character. So you have all these characters in this family who go on this cruise and these adventures in these various locations, and then when they get on the cruise, there are an entire other group of characters. So it's kind of a coming of age story. It's a bit of a romance, and a lot of it is about dealing with death and loss and memory and what's important and that kind of thing. But overall, I liked it a lot. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I just think it says so many good things. I picked up Chasing Christmas Eve by Jill Shalvis, which is book 4 in her Heartbreaker Bay series. It's narrated on audio by Karen White, who does all of her books on audio. Karen White is fantastic. She is perfect for this writer because she just always captures all the characters, and she just, you know, you're right there with them. And the way that she is so wry sometimes in her phrasing, it's perfect. So, oh, the best, the highest marks to Karen White, as always, with this book. This is just one of her romances. It's in the world of Heartbreaker Bay, and it was great. It was just what I needed at the time, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I started out the week with Beartown by Frederik Backman. This is narrated on audio by Marianne, Ireland, and translated from the Swedish by Neil Smith. I was interested to know that Neil Smith has translated a lot of stuff and is very good at it. I would never have known that this book was set in Sweden, other than the fact that the currency is krona. And it could have easily been set in the northern US or in Canada. Well, Marianne, Ireland was fantastic. She was amazing. I got to the end of the book and realized how well she had captured each character, just amazingly. So I could not give the narration higher marks. If you're going to listen to this book, you're going to be very happy, and you're not even going to realize how good it is until probably the end. So the book is about a town that is focused in on hockey. It is a small town, and everything in the town is focused in on this hockey club and the junior team on the club, who is going to the semifinals and hopefully the finals, and that's going to put Beartown on the map. So everyone in the town is so focused in on hockey. They either have a son or a dad that used to be on the team, a son that's on the team currently. Just, you know, it's all about hockey. Everything is all about hockey. And so we pick up it's probably 5 or 6 characters, and we kind of get some background on them, and then everything leads up to an event that happens that puts the star hockey player of this particular team that's going to go win the finals into the spotlight in a very negative way. And so it's about how the town deals with that and how it splits. You know, you're either on one side or the other. These are people that are very black and white. And to the people that are on the side of the star player, it's all about loyalty and what's good for the team. They take what happened and they look at it from a perspective that's somewhat convoluted and kind of a lie in terms of what happened. But it's a very common way to look at what happened if you live in a small town where men pretty much are the guys that run the town, because the hockey team is a guy's sport. And there are a couple of characters that come into play that raise the issue of women's value and how that's looked at. It's very sexist, but it's a good part of the story that plays into it. And there's also, you know, everyone who's on the other side of this issue is it's a very small amount of people in comparison to the people that are on the other side of the issue. And so you have a sense of what's right and what's wrong and how it's being handled. It's being handled in a very common way. What happens is very common in these sorts of situations. But, you know, your sense of justice rises up and you think, wait a minute. So there's that going on, and then there's each character in their various life situation dealing with this situation and trying to figure out how they're going to respond to it and what it's going to cost them because of the people in power and how things are manipulated. Their lives are manipulated somewhat, and they have to make some serious decisions about right and wrong, and like I say, what it's going to cost them. So what I loved about this book was the fact that the way the story played out, it did it in such a way that Backman was able to achieve a sense of justice having been served without departing from the way that these sorts of things commonly go, which is in a way that does not give justice to the situation. I mean, nobody gets justice. And so nobody really got away with anything, which I thought was good. I thought, wow, how did he do that? So I got to the end, and it's a pretty emotional ending. It's a pretty emotional book in that it takes a lot out of you. He uses foreshadowing, which I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that or not. In this case, I think he used it in a very successful way So that tells me that he's a really good writer. You know, I got to the end and I was just wrung out. I thought, oh, wow, that book was amazing. The characters were so well drawn, and the way that they responded was so interesting. And the foreshadowing made me hang on because I wanted to know what happened next. And so I, you know, as a literary device, that worked very well in favor of the story, like I said. So incredible characters, great story. How could I not give this book 5 stars? You know, incredible narration. It was just fantastic all the way around. I'm really glad I read it, and it's really not something that I would normally read. It's literary fiction, but wow, just wow. Really impressed me. And then I picked up Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf. This is narrated on audio by Mark Bramhall. Mark Bramhall was okay. He wasn't fantastic in that while he captured these characters in this story so well, I didn't always know who was speaking because of his style of narration. So I don't know. Once again, is he a voice actor? I wasn't exactly sure. Is he a narrator with incredible expression? Yeah, he kind of reminded me a little bit of Scott Brick, who is a very widely known and famous, really famous narrator. And so this is a novella about 2 older people who form a relationship that is based on companionship, and it's basically the story of how that plays out. It takes place in eastern Colorado. Now, Colorado, if you're like me, you immediately think Denver, mountains, gorgeous, skiing, you know, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This takes place in eastern Colorado, which is, and I know this because I've driven through it a couple of times, it's the end of Colorado that's much more like Kansas. It's flat, it's farmland, it's common people that are very much my people. This could easily be set in the place I live now or the place I come from. And so that was interesting. It was easy, very easy for me to relate to these 2 characters. This older woman, well, they're in their 70s, and the woman is a grandmother, and her grandson comes to stay with her for a while. And so there's that going on, that dynamic that's thrown into it. And then her son, and he has very strong opinions about her life and what should be going on in her life. There's the town and the town's evaluation. I don't necessarily want to say judgment, but it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody's business. So there's that going on. And it was a wonderful story. And as it began to close out, my heart was starting to break because it's so realistic. And so I got to the end of the book. I was completely emotionally wrecked. But I don't cry at books. I get choked up, and then I think, oh, that was so good. But that's where it stops. I got to the end of this book. I'm standing in my sewing room working on a project where I'm often distracted. I'm listening, but I'm doing something that's kind of mindless, kind of not. I burst into tears. And I'm not talking, I'm talking kind of crying, like ugly crying. And I even as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, what in the heck? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? So I kind of had to just cry it out. It didn't take very long, but boy, I was shocked at how this book hit me. And I'm pretty sure it's because it's my people. And my parents are, a little beyond the age where these 2 people are, but fairly close. I mean, it was the stage of life, same stage of life. So, oh, wow. And this is a novella, so it goes pretty quickly. I couldn't get over that. And I thought, how can I not give something that affects me like that 5 stars? So, of course, I did give it 5 stars. But, man, it just did a number on me. I was so shocked and surprised and just in awe of what happened. I thought, what? So I knew after that I was going to have to pick up something light, which is why I picked up the Jill Shalvis book. But yeah. So after all of that last week, man, what do I pick up next that's going to be okay? That's not going to emotionally, wreck me, or it's not going to be so light that it's frivolous. So what I did was I picked up Flawed by Cecelia Ahern. This is narrated on audio by Aysha. Anyway, I finished that last night, immediately thought I need to go and get the sequel. It's a duology. So I picked up Perfect. And again, same narrator. So I'm reading that. I'm still reading The Named by Marianne Curley. It's slow going because it just takes me a long time to read a print book, far longer than it does to listen to a book. So, and then my other thing that I might read, maybe, is Paradox Bound. And this is by Peter Clines and narrated by Ray Porter. And I read The Fold by Peter Clines earlier this year. Really liked it. It's adult sci-fi, and that one had to do with alternate dimensions. And this one, Paradox Bound, I think is about time travel. So, well, duh. Of course, it would be time travel with paradox in the title. So that has great promise too. So anyway, let me know if you've read any of these. I want to talk to you in the comments like always. I love doing that. I love hearing what you're reading and what you thought of the things I've read. So let me know. Let's talk in comments. And that's it for now for me. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching and have a good weekend.